In the remote voting, the technology available and the limitations as of today, several of the solutions that have been built and the experiences with the solutions. And today we just now saw some of the legal issues that actually needs to be addressed along with the infrastructure issues. Carrying on with the discussions, in this session we have three eminent speakers. Okay, firstly we have Sri Pramod Verma, Chief Architect of UID who will be actually talking about the identity issue, voter identity, which is a very important issue that we have been actually seeing since yesterday. He will be actually joining us on Skype, and I would like to quickly introduce him since he is waiting. Welcome, Pramod. I'd just like to introduce you to the audience before I hand over to you to address the audience. Dr. Pramod Verma is currently the Chief Architect at UIDAI. He leads the overall technology and application architecture and development within UIDAI Technology Unit and is based in Bangalore. Before joining UIDAI in July 2009, he was the Chief Technology Architect and Vice President of Research at Sterling Commerce. He worked across the organization and customers to evangelize technology and helps product teams make strategic technology and architecture decisions. Dr. Pramod Verma is currently the Chief Architect and Technology Advisor to Unique Identification Authority of India. As Chief Architect, he is responsible for the entire system, architecture and strategic technology decisions. As already mentioned, he joined UIDAI in 2009 as part of the founding team and has been pivotal in ensuring an open, scalable and secure architecture built to meet the needs of Aadhaar project, which we all are aware of. And currently, in addition to working with UIDAI, he also sits on the advisory board of National Payment Corporation. So with this brief introduction, I actually welcome Dr. Pramod Verma, and since he's waiting, I will introduce the other speakers as we move along, and I hand over to Mr. Pramod Verma for delivering his talk to the audience. Pramod, please.
Thank you. Can you all hear? You okay? And thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak to you. I'm not a domain expert in voting or specifically in this area, but I think what we have done at Aadhaar is going to be pivotal and very key problem that needs to be addressed when it comes to voting. And I hope to take you through the platform, how Aadhaar was built, and some key capabilities that should be very useful when India decides to move towards electronic or remote voting system. And I know that it's late, I don't want to hold you up. So I'm going to be making my session hopefully short enough. And I do not know if there's a question answer session, and I'll let the organizers appropriately ask me if there are any questions from the audience. Thank you. I do have my presentation. I'm not sure whether it's shown up there. Is up and running? Okay. So okay, next slide, first slide, please. So yeah, next. Okay, thank you. We were in 2009 when the project was initiated. It was a very interesting time, and some of those challenges continue even today. And India is, as several of you know, and if I'm repeating some of the information that you already know, pardon, apologies. But I think hopefully you will learn some new things about how Aadhaar was conceived. So India is very, very diverse in everything that we do today. And most importantly, the second point, we actually spend 300,000 crore rupees, it's about 50 billion US dollars, on direct subsidies. And over the years, I think the need for identity for social development, not necessarily identity as a security instrument. It is more for social development, started to get root. It started early 2000 in India, the discussions, and one early attempt was done, but in 2009, when we were coming together under the leadership of Nandan Nilekani, situation was we were spending a lot of money, India as a country, and extremely large, amounts of money goes into leakages due to the lack of identity. Lack of identity actually solves, or lack of identity creates two issues. One, for the system to be able to not identify the person and hence having very convoluted or very roundabout ways to resolve the issue of creating some sort of a unique identity. Secondly, most importantly, for the person, for the beneficiary of such subsidies as a resident of India, they find it very, very hard because assuming most people want to enjoy convenience over anything else, it's very hard for them to have the convenience or the choice. For example, if you don't have an identity, then you're forced to go to the same office or a same shop for food subsidies. If you want to get food, you have to go to the same shop, or you have to go to renew your driver's license. You have to go to the same office to ensure that, because systemically there was no mechanism for system to identify that the same beneficiary who is coming. So if the decision making of the identity decision was done at the back end, then the advantage of giving the choice to the consumer, choice to the beneficiary to go anywhere, anytime, immediately become a practical advantage. And that's the same thing for voting. I mean, there is a reason why we insist on voting exactly at the same ward within the country. If I am away for that week for a travel due to my work needs or anything else, and I miss the opportunity to vote, and that is because the identity and the uniqueness and the verification, the fact that you have actually indeed voted uniquely, is actually at the front end. It is not at the back end, and hence every control, checks and measures are actually front end. And unless this is removed, the anytime, anywhere, the convenience of the choice cannot be brought in any of it. So that's a very important aspect that we identify as the need. Next slide, please. Is the slide number 4. So the vision of the project was to create a digital national identity. And it was very important that it was not an identity card, a physical instrument. That was very, very key for us to ensure that the identity is attached to you as an individual. We become our identity rather than our physical card becoming a proxy for the identity. So we said we do not issue a card, we issue a letter with a printed number for people to remember, but that has no security at all. Actually, that is just a paper with printed, you can make any number of copies. The value is because the identity is unique, it's biometrically unique, so that was very key. And secondly, it was verifiable online, anytime, anywhere. And the authenticity of the identity claim that a person is making, that I am Pramod. If I make that claim, today I prove the claim by showing a paper, a copy of the paper. Rather, Aadhaar system said, no, the way you want to be able to prove is to actually verify it online, against the online system, so that physical papers and cards become irrelevant and becomes available nationally, anytime, anywhere. And interestingly, we also said, unlike many identity systems around the world, such as Social Security number in the US, for example, We wanted to make an identity system that is domain agnostic. That means the identity was a pure play identity and it had nothing but identity. So all Aadhaar system did is essentially to deduplicate the person through biometrics and issue a new number. And the number can be verified online anytime, anywhere. Nothing else. So the system was extremely simple. And then we said unless the system is designed to be future-proofed in terms of allowing other applications to take advantage of this identity platform, it's pointless, and we will create another card or another paper exercise of proving identity. So we created identity as a platform, meaning that we exposed open APIs that many other applications can tag into, and many applications are live today. And CDAC, for example, is actively a partner of UIDAI, building many applications on top of Aadhaar identity platform. And the entire system works on, all it does is issue an identity and allow applications and other third-party partners to verify the identity claim via Open API. And interestingly, a few weeks back, under the DIT, Prime Minister launched an application called eSign. And this is a very interesting application that allows any of the Aadhaar holders or the identity, the people who possess this Aadhaar identity, to be able to digitally sign any document online. So now suddenly you are having the ability to offer a fully legal signature alternative using online authentication. And this was something which was not even thought about in 2009. Even we didn't think about it when we started. That is the power of the platform, that innovation can happen outside the platform without having to build all the innovations inside the Aadhaar system. So that is how it's done. And today, India is actually primed to start moving towards truly electronic and paperless services for our citizens. And remote voting is no different, and it's a powerful mechanism for us to be able to offer that choice with control, security, and privacy and everything else in the system. And that is something that's important. Next slide, please. So what Aadhaar does is very simple. All it captures is four attributes, four demographic attributes: name, date of birth, gender and address, and biometrics, which is fingerprints and iris. And Aadhaar system captured both iris and fingerprints for two reasons. One is for higher accuracy, because we have 1.2 billion people, and this is a system that is going to survive, quite like Social Security, into the many decades, and the number is never issued to anyone else. So that actually means that the biometric system has to scale to several billion people uniquely, and hence multi-modal biometric was very key. Secondly, also most importantly, for the purposes of inclusion, and India has many people who might have difficulty with their fingerprints, or even leprosy patients, or anybody else who have, or people who have lost their arm. So the number of people are not small in India. You know, while the percentage is small, actual number becomes very high because of the population. And it was important for Aadhaar project to ensure that inclusive identity is created, and hence the multimodal biometrics. And after capturing this data, it is captured and sent to a central identity data center, which is actually distributed, but logically central, and it does a complete deduplication, biometric deduplication, that allows today with 880 million people, and if you enroll today, your Aadhaar biometrics is actually matched against every one of the 880 million people in the database and issued a unique number. And the Aadhaar number itself is unique number, completely random. There is no, it's important, that point is very important for remote, a lot of privacy reasons. The number has no intelligence embedded in the number. That actually means that whether there's no name or the gender or a state in which you belong or anything that is embedded in the system, because we felt demographics by definition, legally, India allows change of name and change of address and even change of gender or change of moving from state to state. And it is silly to embed such information in the number and becomes somewhat irrelevant once you start changing stuff. So this is a completely random number and it is unique for you as an individual and it's never reissued ever. So that is ever growing database. And that is during the identity issuance. This is a one-time activity which allows identity issuance to happen, and there is an update process that allows people to update any of these data, minimal data that Aadhaar captures through an update process. That is also live, and people update their address, people update their phone number, example, And once the identity is issued, and then it becomes usable through an online verification. Next slide, please. So the authentication is a service, it's an open API, application programming interface, that allows external applications, whether it's government or private applications, to be able to verify the identity claim of the Aadhaar holder. And when Aadhaar holder walks into, for example, today in several banks, that you can open a bank account just by providing an Aadhaar number with no proof of identity or additional proof of identity or address required. So what they do is that the Aadhaar holder can walk in to a bank branch or a bank network operator, like a business correspondent, and then you enter your Aadhaar number. Authentication is always a one-to-one match. It's not a one-to-many match like the identification. It's a 1:1. That is, you always provide a primary key, which is an Aadhaar number. Along with that, the same API allows the system to validate biometrics of that person or address of that person or name of that person in the same API. That actually means that if I claim my name is Pramod and I am Pramod, both can be verified. I am Pramod can be verified by putting my biometrics, and whereas my name is Pramod Verma can be verified through the same API by asking the UIDAI system, Aadhaar system, whether the identity claim is true or not true. And the Aadhaar system responds with the API. It's a real-time API, typically about 200 milliseconds, and it comes back with a yes or a no in a digitally signed response. That means the response is non-refutable, auditable by the application provider, and that it says whether the identity claim is right or wrong. And the way the Aadhaar API works is that it is completely neutral to the technology on the front end or a device that is being used to capture the data or the protocol that is used on the front end to transport the data. It's very, very important that neutrality of device agnostic, platform agnostic, protocol agnostic API was very, very important for us to be able to allow any kinds of applications. So today people actually, you can see Android phones with a biometric attachment being a front end which allows authentication, or a micro ATM like device, which is a point of sale like device that allows point of sale systems to authenticate and transact money. So all Aadhaar system does is authentication. It does not understand anything about the transaction. Okay? Next slide, please. So the work so far, it's just a quick update. We started in 2010. We started the project in 2009, launched in September 2010. And initial takeoff was slow as expected. And now we do about 1 million Aadhaar numbers every day. So the system is capable of issuing 1 million identities, which is post-deduplicated against 880 million. So that's very compute intensive, but the system is able to do that. And our target is, UIDA targets 1 billion to be completed this year and 1.2 billion completed next year. And then it's a resident identity. It has nothing to do with citizenship. It has nothing to do with anything. It just proves that you are a resident. And the authentication and eKYC services, electronic KYC is an add-on service on top of authentication that allows digitally signed demographic data along with the photographs to be returned. No biometric, it's just a digitally signed response to be returned. So this allows banks, for example, to open an account without asking for any paper. So you can actually enter the Aadhaar number and you get an electronic KYC, know your customer, digitally signed from UIDAI, and that is good enough under the domain. RBI has regulated that domain, and this is a valid proof of identity and proof of address for bank opening. And this allows completely paperless account opening, and that's actually live today. And we have thousands of developers, hundreds of million authentication already done in the system. Next slide, please. A quick architecture. Next slide, please. Okay, quick update on architecture is that it's completely open, and when we started, there was no other project in the world that was anywhere close to this magnitude. The largest was the US Visit program. When you enter US, they actually capture biometrics, and the US Visit program was about 150 million when we started, probably around 180 million now. And we were going to be 10 times larger than that. So we had to ensure that the entire architecture is neutral to a vendor-specific implementation. That was very key because this was a national project and it was never been done. So we had to de-risk many aspects, including the biometric matching aspect. So we have, it's built on open source, open architecture, completely API-based, even inside the system, and we have multiple biometric algorithms that is in play to ensure that accuracy of biometric matching is retained to the highest level, and it is designed for scale from day one, and security and privacy is also designed from day one to ensure, because it is involved biometrics and it involved identity. So obviously we had to ensure that security and privacy, and this was designed to be that way from day one, and it was not an afterthought. That's very, very important to ensure the data is protected. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. So design principles, I think this is very key, and this actually allows you to imagine why it is perfectly suitable for systems like voting. This is, first of all, the Aadhaar system is designed as a platform. That actually means it is naturally built, inherently it is built to be plugged into other applications. The Aadhaar itself does not build any application, so it is natively built to ensure that other applications can take advantage of it by authentication anywhere, anytime. So it's 24/7, anywhere remotely you can do authentication of that person. And the authentication allows both biometric authentication, which is the physical presence of that person, and as well as non-biometric authentication, there are some use cases for that too. And second point, it is built very neutral. That means it has no affinity about whether it is a financial services platform, whether it's built like a social security for a purpose, as social security, or it is built for national security, whether it's built for healthcare. No such connotation. The minimalism of the application and the neutrality of Aadhaar allows any application outside Aadhaar to be able to build those domain rules about how to run, and the domain workflows and domain specific attributes in their system without Aadhaar having to have any knowledge of those functional or domain specific rules or constraints. And this is built for application agnostic, technology agnostic, device and network agnostic. So it actually works very seamlessly even in 2G network or any other network. and it has no protocol affinity at all. It can work very, very custom. So if a voting system wants a very proprietary way of doing the security or a protocol on the front end from the voting machine, it's perfectly okay because Aadhaar does not intrude into that. And the third point, that it is built to be federated. I think this is a very, very important point to understand. And a lot of people misunderstand this point. Actually, Aadhaar is built as a root identity, like a root certificate. It is when you are born in the country, you will get an Aadhaar number, and this is the same number. It is irrevocable number, remains throughout your life and never issued to anyone else. And it has some negatives because it's of irrevocability. What is critical is that UIDAI has always articulated that identity itself will be federated. That means you can build an electoral identity or a payment identity or a driver's license or a travel identity such as passport, which is a layer on top of Aadhaar. And such federated identity instruments are very important to ensure that those rules of those identities, who is entitled to vote, for example, who is entitled to travel or who is entitled to drive, and what are the workflows in terms of issuance of those identities and revocability of those identities and the expiry and everything else is very critical for every domain. And Aadhaar is only a root identity. Simply says is that this person is biometrically same as the other person and the identity claim is validated and everything else is left to that. The same goes for data. That's also very important. Aadhaar is a zero knowledge minimal system. It has 4 attributes, demographic attributes, and Aadhaar system by definition does not know whether you are actually voting or whether you are withdrawing money from an ATM, or whether you are traveling from Delhi to Mumbai. Aadhaar is by design, does not want to know and does not know. And that was very, very key, that the data, transaction data, is actually fully federated into the application domain and not all in a central data source such as Aadhaar. And it is built to be that way from day one. And hence, it is designed by privacy by design. It is, if you look at numbering, if you look at minimalism of the data, or if you look at the zero knowledge transaction system, that means we know nothing. How you are using Aadhaar is not known to us. All we know is that you were authenticated by this agency. Not for what purpose, not for transaction, and you can even layer it in agency and sub-agency so that the neutrality or the anonymity is preserved fully in the system. Okay? And next slide, please. And this lets us wonder that India may be very uniquely poised to actually jump, sort of leapfrog in providing electronic, of course. You have to solve policy matters, you have to solve, design constraints, privacy, and you have to many other things. But the first step of ensuring that a unique identity which is verifiable online, anytime, anywhere, to 1 billion people in the country, that step of creating that identity platform is already done. And because of that, it's called a real identity, there's a human behind it, and it's biometrically authenticatable. That means the presence of that person is validatable anytime, anywhere. The response is digitally signed, so any response to every API from Aadhaar system back, the response to the application, for example, voting application, is a digitally signed response, allowing voting application to ensure non-repudiability and auditability, that this person was present at this time, at this place. Not necessarily who he voted for, and that's something which obviously the voting applications have to handle. Now, because inherently Aadhaar does not intrude into the domain rules, we don't even know what domain attributes such as which ward, which voting machine, where this person was, and and other things such as the transaction, purpose of the transaction. We don't know, Aadhaar system does not know. That allows a true privacy-centered voting systems can be built without the central identity system having any knowledge of voting is going on at all. I mean, completely, you can anonymize. And truly, now it allows the voting application. So India, if we were to build a central remote voting application, this is no better time. So actually take advantage of Aadhaar and really layer the remote voting, the policy matters, the workflow aspects, the rules of voting, and anonymity of that voting, but authenticity of the person. All this can be built into a remote voting application without the identity system knowing anything. And this is currently with 880 million people in the system to go into 1 billion. There's no better time really to start thinking about this. And one more slide, please. And just before I wind up, I want to give final thoughts is that Aadhaar is the largest biometric identity system in the world. Now with large system and it's fully operational, online APIs are live, CDAC is a very close partner, does a lot of authentication online, and the entire platform is actually allows government and private applications to innovate outside identity system, without identity system knowing anything. And India is probably the only country having a real biometric backed identity platform as a utility. It's like a grid, power grid. India now has the utility that many systems can now tap on. And it is a government issued identity. And it is verifiable online, non-repeatable, and hence very strong identity validation can be done. And it's perfectly possible in India. I think it's only a question of when. I think India will, I think, surge ahead in my mind, especially with remote voting because of the utility that we have been investing in as a country, such as Aadhaar. And of course, connectivity and everything else that we're doing as part of Digital India weaves perfectly into a dream of allowing people, citizens, a choice of where they want to vote and how they want to vote. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have time for a few questions. The floor is open for questions to Dr. Pramod. Please feel free to ask if you have any questions.
Good morning, sir. I am Shivaraman from NIC. Sir, first of all, really hats off you and your team on this Aadhaar, because I can say Aadhaar a knowledge enabler for government intelligence, because it can provide a 360-degree view of the citizen, and all the sectoral applications or schemes are being seeded with Aadhaar. And such process is going on now, like in the electoral roll, in VDS, so on and so forth. In future, I can say, with this Aadhaar enablement, we can even do a predictive modeling for the physical policy, what would be the optimal physical policy for a particular scheme, things like that. But that time is yet to come. I have 3 questions for you. First question, at the district level, we are facing few issues about the updation of this particular Aadhaar. At the time of creation, people are not provided their mobile number, their email. Now for implementing certain schemes like digital locker, so on and so forth, these are all mandatory. But now it is in offline mode. Can it be possible in online so that these content can be updated? Though Aadhaar as a mandate, it said the number won't change, whereas rest other things keep on changing, including the name, because after marriage, a lady name can be changed.
Yeah, sure.
This is my first question. Is there any facility?
Do you want me to answer the first question before you go to the second one?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so it's a great question, and thank you for, I think it's not Aadhaar system alone, and I think it's very silly for us to take the credit for what we have done. I think the adoption of Aadhaar is when the real value will be delivered to the people of India, and unless the adoption happens outside UIDAI and among many applications that you all are building, so unless that adoption happens, it's just an identity which is useless. So I think it's great that many applications among you are adopting. And to answer your question on update, update today update both online update, that's self-service portal update, and physical center update centers are coming online. What if you really see, like any other system, we are only 2010 to 2015, barely 5 years. So I think the initial wave of Aadhaar was about issuance of Aadhaar, and now we have the entire applications live for all updates. So you can, by policy, you can update name, you can update gender, you can update phone number, you can update even facial photograph, for example. And these are available both as an update center where people can walk in and update, and it's also available online as a self-service portal. Coming back to the other point on mobile number, I agree that mobile number, in fact, is a very interesting question that you asked. 3 weeks ago, when Prime Minister launched Digital India Week, as part of that, and Deshi was really a critical pivot for impetus or push for us to be able to expose what's called a mobile update API. So we have actually exposed an API for applications to allow, trusted applications to allow mobile updates, because mobile number does not require a document verification, and it can be updated by biometric. So people can walk in to a point of sale and put in your biometric and authenticate, and after authentication you can update mobile number. And this API is now live, and CDAC, I should say, is the first adopter of this application, and they have been part of our beta testing, and CDAC has actually released an application for CSEs to allow mobile number to be updated, and those touch points should be a lot more than the regular touch points such as address change or phone change. And once the mobile number is updated, you can even do updates online using an OTP authentication. Okay, so we hope with physical centers allowing updates, online update, and mobile update being an API that can be tied into many CSC centers and bank touch points and telco touch points, people should be able to seed mobile number very quickly into Aadhaar system and take advantage of all the online services based on OTP on a mobile, for example. Great question, and this is sort of the right time for us to, all these systems are live, but I agree that adoption needs to take on.
Okay, thank you, sir. That update center we are yet to see. I will may request UID to set up at the earliest, because we have a lot of requests keeps on pouring in for updates at the district level. Okay, so my second question is regarding this Aadhaar payment bridge and your NPCI, National Payment Corporation. What is happening is that at the bank level, the citizen walks in and he gets seeded his account number. So for example, my name is Sivaraman, yes. So it is being seeded by the manager by seeing the other documents, and he gives me a certificate, yes, your bank account is being seeded with this. And when my line department who gives me the subsidy, there my name is Sivaraman Shanmugasundaram. So I have given there also, and the subsidy get transferred. But what happened, the bank is seeded, the line department also seeded the Aadhaar. When it goes to API suspends this particular transaction, citing the reason name is not matching. Because I am facing a dozen of such thing in consumer forum. So this is one issue. So there is a automatic blocking by your NPCI in the Aadhaar payment bridge level at the back end.
So it's a good question, and you know what, I think we as first generation adopters of Aadhaar, I suppose unfortunately in the current systems as it is in India, there is no uniformity in names or anything. I mean, in mine, how it's in passport, how it's in electricity bill, or how it's, I mean, it's a very messy system today. But hopefully, this is maybe 4 or 5 years, a decade before that it gets solved. So in the long run, I don't think it's an issue. In the short run, NPCI Aadhaar system does allow what's called a partial name match. And we do allow name match rules to be applied as long as initials are matching. And these are already live. So maybe I can give this feedback to NPCI and see where we can improve and allow, as long as most of the names are, components of the names are matched. It's very hard to fully match the names today in Indian system. So I will give that feedback to APB system. Definitely good input. Thank you.
My third one is not a question, sir, a request or a suggestion regarding SRDH, State Resident Data Hub. At several times you also requested, but they are providing entire demographic except your biometric photos, things like that. Because of this reason, we need to recapture or reduplicate this particular work with respect to PDS or with respect to any other sectoral application. This exercise we have to carry out again. So, what's the rationale behind not providing this demographic information? Sorry, yeah, other than this demographic information, like biometrics and photos are not provided.
No, by the way, when we say demographics, what we share as part of our electronic KYC, which is the record of the identity, is exactly what is in the printed letter, which is name, date of birth, gender, address, and the photograph. So this is the data that we do transfer in a digitally signed fashion, and we do allow SRDH to embed that. But of course, we don't share biometrics such as fingerprint iris, and I don't think we have always taken, UID has taken a stance that applications should not proliferate biometrics in the system, because now it's a utility in the country and it's pretty straightforward to use it. And don't think the copy of biometrics need to be retained. But if there is any peculiar reason that application particularly requires biometric, you have to capture that separately. Aadhaar system will never share biometrics outside, but photo is shared though. So for seeding purposes, that's the same as KYC. You know your customer. Today, when you do electronic KYC, we do share name, date of birth, gender, address, and photograph.
Thank you. Thank you.
We have some more questions, Pramod.
Okay, sure. I know I'm holding up others, and it's before lunch, so
No problem
I
at
hope
all. Yes, ma'am.
you can ask questions.
So, hello, I'm Purvi Vora from George Washington University. It's impressive, the scale of your project. And I think also, as it gets used, the kinds of things that can be done, in particular with respect to migrant workers, subsidies and so on, is just mind-blowing, the scale of the transformation. So, pretty good job, congrats. I actually have two questions, and I'll ask maybe the shorter one first. So the first question is related to voting, and that question is, so do you foresee maybe having constituencies automatically determined from the address? So, so let's say in a voting situation, I want to vote and I have my Aadhaar ID, and you get to say something, yes or no, based on, let's say I walk into, my preferences for supervised voting, so I walk into somewhere and I'm authenticated using the Aadhaar database, maybe with my fingerprint, and you say yes or no based on my number, and this is her number, this fingerprint and this number match, yes, that's what you say. And then maybe you'll have an address for me, and you might be able to communicate that address to where I went. But then they are going to decide to allow me to vote in a particular Lok Sabha, Vidhan Sabha, Bombay Municipal Corporation constituency, right? So will they have to decide whether that address falls in the constituency, or will you offer to do it? I'm not, you don't have to commit to something now. I'm just saying this would be the question, right? So, and it can be maybe automatically determined from the address.
So it's a good question, Purva, and thanks for the compliment. I think this is for the whole country. I think that national project like such as this, pulling off something like this, requires the entire country to rally behind a project like this. So it's kudos to all of India moving towards digital India. I think nothing. UID is only a small portion of that. By the way, your question. In fact, I can commit to not do anything. I think it's very, very key.
I see, so the application will do that.
Very, very important that that again, I think the minimalism of that application and not scope creep of domain-specific rules that is coming into a national central identity system is extremely critical, because healthcare or social workers, you can't put all the rules into Aadhaar system. It's a bad idea. So we will commit to not intrude into those rules, and I think the voting system has to determine based on the address. Where the address is very structured, we have under DATI, under the National E-Governance Standards, the address is, there is a national address structure under the MDDS standards, and Aadhaar follows that address structure. So there is a very well-structured address that is available from Aadhaar. Now whether that is to be used for mapping into your constituency, or whether you will allow any constituency in the state, for example, I would, as a citizen, would like to see some choice.
Yeah.
So
No,
I
no.
think it is left to the application.
But the ballot you get will be decided. You could vote anywhere. You could vote in Kashmir maybe, but the ballot you get will be decided by which constituency.
No, I
So the
understand.
so you do need
even
to.
wonder. I even wonder today we have narrowed down into a ward level. Should it really matter that I can only, maybe as an entire constituency, if I can vote anywhere, I'm okay. I'm the sense that physically I can be anywhere, I get that for sure. But I'm saying, who am I voting for? Is anybody in the constituency? Now, constituency can be mapped from the address. It's pretty straightforward to map, and I hope that a voting application will pretty obviously do that.
Okay. So the other question. So
That's
this
longer one.
about a little bit longer, but this is about retaining the fingerprints. So a replay attack of a fingerprint could be performed by maybe by a device, by an entity, whatever. And I understand your desire to kind of be out of all this, but you are the entity that would be able to recognize a replay attack, right? So I think I had conversations with other members of the Aadhaar team about this long ago when things were just being discussed. And so at the time, there was some interest in sort of thinking about this, or at least with the person I talked to. So I don't know, have you thought about this? Would you be willing to think about this, about ways of, it's not even clear to me how you would really be able to detect it, because if you look for something that's distinct, it's easy to add noise and make it different, it's easy to rotate or scale or something like that.
You can beat anything. I think what is really done, I think we have done many things, and I think it is a long answer for me, so I will not hold you up, but you can actually write to me and I will send you specific published material detailing about how we are done. But there are 3 or 4 things I want to immediately bring it up to your notice. One is that we have launched something called a registered devices, and I would absolutely be sure that by the time remote voting sets in place, registered devices will be used, which allows the encryption at the chip, at the sensor, and it cannot be injected, and that's actually going through a proof of concept right now. And there are 5 vendors that are providing both iris and fingerprint. They will all make that available. And this is very key for us to also move towards what's called an assisted model, from an assisted model to a self-service model, where we have 3 or 4 phone vendors who want to put iris on the phone. And for self-service transaction, you can look at the phone, iris authenticate, and so on, because it becomes immediately a 2-factor authentication because the possession of the phone and biometrics, right? And these can only happen with what we call a registered device. I'm not sure whether you looked at that spec. You should look at that spec, and it is very, very tight in terms of replay. And secondly, we have what we call enabled immediate notifications. So we have a notification API as well as SMS email-based notifications. And notifications immediately allow you to make sure that it can be tracked and it's notified that you have been authenticated.
Right.
And that is very, very key. Actually, it's part of that fraud detection system. The third one, it's also that we are enabling now what's called a locking, biometric locking. As a holder, you can actually lock your biometric. Nobody else can use it. And we are going to be going live that very soon, in literally weeks.
So you mean nobody can use it, right? If you lock your biometric.
Except you decide to unlock it,
yeah. Yeah. Okay. Thanks. I'll write to you. Thank you.
Can we have the mic for Professor Beni Madhavan?
This is Beni Madhavan from Bangalore, a senior science. For the first time, we heard about the Aadhaar, all kinds of presentations at Bangalore, and what I hear now, enormous hope. It's really matured. But I have a very simple question. This permanent number, what happens to the people who do not exist anymore? Because there is no info on living or non-living.
Yeah.
So what happens?
Very good question. Excellent question. In fact, a lot of people come back and ask us, why are you not recording death, for example? And we could record that, and it's a straightforward enhancement that we could make. But again, we were asking this question to ourselves. We are not, UIDAI as an authority does not own death registry or birth registry or any of that. So what the liability of that, whether that person is actually dead, and as you know, and all of us know, in India, death reporting is because you have some property. Otherwise, nobody reports death. It's very wacko system, right, in our country. So we were very, very careful in treading that line in terms of whether somebody reported as dead and what is the purpose. How does it help our system? Because assuming that technology is not a limitation, that today our database, for example, can easily grow up to 4 to 6 billion. We already designed to go to 4 to 6 billion. Hopefully we won't have to grow that fast. We'll have bigger problems, I think. Then what is the purpose of actually marking as dead? Is that because we want to remove it from the database, or because we want to say it could be a potential fraud? Even without marking as dead, today our fraud detection system can actually detect if a 110-year-old has been authenticated, and we could trigger a audit trail, because authentication comes as a digitally signed request from the application all the way, and hence non-repudiable all the way from the device to our center. We could actually trigger a quick check from our fraud detection to say, hey, something is not right, because somebody 120 years seem to have authenticated biometrically. So these interesting fraud detection rules can be brought in, and if the database has no real limitations, then why do we explicitly mark the person as dead? So I think currently UID has decided to not care. Actually, it's a system outside UID today tracking death registry and birth registry, and we can detect fraud and we can continue to grow in the database unless we really have to know the person is dead or not. Does that answer, Professor?
Thank you very much. In the interest of time and in the interest of other sessions,
Yes.
I think we'll move on to the next